Всем привет.
Hello everyone, my name is Andrei Radosov. I'm a lead developer in the PT application inspector. We develop plugins for the IDE, and that's what I'll be talking about. Okay, here is the agenda for my presentation. I'll start with a few words on secure development. Why do we need it? And how plugins help to make it secure. Then we'll talk about some technical details. I'll share with you some life hacks on developing plugins. Well, you might be quite inspired to develop your own plugins following my presentation. And then I will share with you our results. Okay, let's start with the problem definition. I believe that many of you have seen this picture. So this is the life cycle for software development. In this case, we share with you the way we do it in our company. Well, the secure development approach. It means that we should validate vulnerabilities at every development stage. Here we are highlighting two stages: developing and building and testing. So that's what we are interested in. And I believe that developing will be even more exciting. Why so? Let's have a look at the shift-left concept. The idea is pretty straightforward. The sooner you discover the vulnerability, the cheaper it will be to rectify. The time to be invested by the developers and the rest of the team will be reduced, and time is money, so you can see the dollars here. Well, recognizing the problem will not tell us what to do. Okay. We can say that we want to fix vulnerabilities at the development stage. That's nice, but they are not going to fix themselves. There are several reasons behind it. Number one, the developers are not generally interested in fixing vulnerabilities. They believe that this is something beyond their area of responsibility, and this is more like administrative load for the security guys elsewhere. We can tell them quite rightly that so when we talk in this by and large way, we can share our personal experience with them. Well, that's my vision at least. Before I joined information security, I wouldn't care about any project vulnerabilities, but I believe that I was quite a good developer at that time. Okay. Thus, we decided that making secure development popular is a good idea. We want it to be instilled into the culture of development. A good way to do it would be plugins. Why so? Number one, plugins are exactly designed to be integrated into the development environment. So any tool, any convenient tool, is a good thing. If it is somewhere in another tool we know and we don't need to switch between contexts to use it, this makes it even better and reduces the threshold. Another thing is that this makes vulnerabilities more tangible if you deal with them from within the IDE. Why so? So you can see the place where the vulnerability is manifesting itself. We can see how it can be exploited, how it can be fixed, and how you can verify that it has been fixed. This makes the whole process more exciting. The third bullet point Well, I believe it's quite important to make secure development more popular. So we show vulnerabilities when integrated in IDE, just like syntax mistakes, the compiler mistakes, and interpreter mistakes. This makes these vulnerabilities more prominent. Okay, I have talked about the why. Now let's talk about the process. How we have developed them and how, technically speaking, we want them to work. I'm not going to talk about the stat analysis, but rather we'll be talking about the plugins development. Okay, let's think about what we want from plugins. So we want to make secure development popular. We want everyone to fix the vulnerabilities. So this means that we need to cover as many developers as we can. This means we need to develop extensions for various IDEs. And this should be as straightforward as possible. We should have a unified code base. And the second important thing is the cross-platform requirement. I believe it's quite self-explanatory. We know that all the developers are using various OSs. So to reduce the threshold, we need to be friendly to them. And the third important thing is easy installation. If we have somebody who is not well motivated to fix vulnerabilities and to do all this stuff, and if these guys face any challenge when trying to tune it and start doing it, they will just forget about it. So it should be straightforward. Having discussed all that, we came up with this solution for the plugins. So we start from the right with the client component of it. So we see two blocks here, the Visual Studio code extension and the IntelliJ IDEA plugin. We have picked them for a reason. They match our requirement. I mean, we cover a lot of developers and environments. Why? So you can have one extension for the IntelliJ IDEA, and it will be good for the whole IDE in the J family. And so we can see here the followers of TypeScript and Java. So it is good for various tasks. If you look at these extensions, you might think that they don't have a lot of shared code base. And here we have another thing to help us, and this is the Kotlin multi-platform client library. I'll talk about it later. And the third element here is the analyzer. It has two components, the .NET app and the analysis module. The .NET app is designed to orchestrate the analysis modules. They have some inbuilt logic, and they have a local layer with a local database. The .NET app is launched as a sub-process, and it deals with the plugins through the socket transfer. Let's have a look at the message we exchange between the plugins and the backend, the analyzer. There are three components to it. We have the header, the length of the message, and the content of the message. In the header, we have the type, ID, and the format. This means that running the interaction protocol through the sockets and digitalization for every plugin would be an uphill job. That's why we are using this library, which is developed with the multi-platform, Kotlin multi-platform. What makes it good? Well, we can build it into JS, describing the types and packaging it to the npm package. And we can also do it for the JVM jar artifact using Kotlin. In this library, we have the models and the contracts for the protocol interaction we need, the socket usage principles, and some shared utilities which are used for both plugins. So this is a kind of a client library. But you know that we will definitely have a fly in the ointment. We cannot avoid it. Kotlin multi-platform has a lot of issues. And the major one, strange as it might seem, is the JS build. It doesn't support all we need. For instance, Kotlin enums cannot be built in JS. We cannot deal with the asynchronous functions, the suspended ones, so we can build them in JS, but we cannot use them in the client app. And sometimes there are cases like that. We have a popular library for the serialization, the Kotlin library, and it has a generic method with deserialization. And so we deserialize the line into an object. And the signature is an inline and refire type. And this is something we cannot export into JS. And if we use the deserialization method somewhere from this library, so the signatures will change and will not be able to export it to JS. And this caused, well, some issues, and we had deserialized boolean to solve the problem. So this was a kind of a makeshift solution. And the third thing is easy installation and spreading. Well, installation and spreading. This issue can be split into two parts. Number one, if all the functions you want to share are there in the client part, so that's scenario one, and in this case it's pretty easy, and you can just send the plugins to the market and be happy. And the second scenario is like that. You have an analyzer or utility you need to download. It's pretty big. You cannot package it into the add-on, and there are several things to cope with this problem. One way to do it. You want the user to be in charge, and the user will have to download the utility, to install it, to position it somewhere, to set the configs. So the user is likely to behave the way you can see it in the picture now. Because, well, we know that they are not well motivated. And the second thing is the installer. The installer is a good option, but there are several issues here. You need to code the installer. You need to support it and test it for various operating systems. And spreading it is not that easy. We cannot just upload it to the market. We need to get the extension from somewhere, then the installer, or we need to share the installer forgetting about the market. And the third option is to make the extension in charge of spreading and installation, for it to check whether the utility is available, to check the versions, and if it is there, Oh, if it is not there, I mean, it should be downloaded and installed. Now let's talk about some general cases. You will inevitably face this when you develop some software. Okay, let's talk about test coverage. Well, here you can see two things: the unit tests and the integration tests. Well, unit tests are here to say that this is not the best option for extensions. You can cover some isolated pieces of the business logic. But if you want to cover the extension properly with the unit tests, this becomes a kind of a process to develop the mock of the whole IDE functionality. And the second thing here is integration. Here it's much more promising. We can code it just like the UI tests. There are two links here, one for the IntelliJ, the other one is for the VS Code. Well, they work in a more or less the same way, using some different technologies. And this is just like code in the Selenium tests. You click through the UI and you can code assets for this. As I promised, I'll be talking about the bumps we've had on the road. So we recently publicly released the plugin, and we could hope for a good outcome. So we tested everything and we announced this, but on the day of the release, somebody decided to test it. But IntelliJ IDE was updated just the day before, and they were cracking the Java and so on and so forth, and our plugin with the new version would destroy the IDE operations. So this is my recommendation based on this issue. So please follow the major versions of the IDEs you support, so that you test the early build as soon as you can. So this early build was available a month before it was actually released. So we learned it the hard way. A couple of general recommendations. When you develop the plugins, you can run into issues like that. You don't have the API from the IDE you're developing this extension for. Well, we've had a case like that. We want to add filters to the VS Code, and the vulnerability is shown there in the problems window. Expanding the filters is something you cannot do in the problems window. So we decided to add another window for the vulnerabilities filtering. When we add this window, you can see it on the screen, we had some issues with the UI, like grouping. We couldn't group the elements of the list. Well, there are a lot of requests in GitHub for these features, the API issues, but the sure way to do it, when you talk about VS Code, you should look for this from the Microsoft, and they will give you the workarounds for their own API. And please don't forget about the resource consumption when you code the extension. If the extension takes up 100% of the CPU, no one's going to like it, and it will be even difficult to turn off. And another thing is about the settings. So in the settings menu, the developers give you a large list of the settings, and this is really difficult to understand. So we believe that we should split it. A part should be there, and another part should be in the JSON file with the JSON scheme you can launch. So this is quite convenient. And the final thing is about the README. Don't forget about the README files. For the IDEs, the good thing is that if you use the GIFs there in the README, they are shown by the market. That's it in terms of the general technical features, and now I'll talk about the results of our effort, our extension. To do this, I'll need to show you some video. Okay, thank you. Let's talk about the Visual Studio Code extension. Installation is really straightforward. That's what we are doing. We are installing from the VCX file because we are not present on the market yet. Okay, a couple of seconds. Here it is, installed. Here is our extension. You can see the README I have talked about. And if we had the GIFs open, we would see them. Okay, the project we want to scan. Here you can see the questions, whether we want to enable the extension for the application inspector. Okay, we activate it, so we have the temp folder .ai, so it goes to git ignore, and we have a suggestion to download the analyzer. So we didn't have it. That's what I've been talking about. We want the utilities installation to be done by the utility. And now it will be quickly downloaded. So now it's installing. This is de-covering, as a matter of fact. And for Mac, we would have the installer launched, and we'll have to click it. So here you can see the enabled extension. So we have the interface, and we have the buttons like launch scanning, filtration. We can see some other windows to the left. And we can use Ctrl-Shift-P and have the list of commands, and the button is there. It is quite lucrative, so we are pressing it. Okay, we see the progress window, the output, and you can see the status bar as well. Following the scan process, we can see the statistics, the number of scanned files, the vulnerabilities discovered. Well, this is not a lot of fun. What is a lot of fun is the problems window. We can see the vulnerabilities. So we have scanned the project using PHP. Here you can see the vulnerabilities. They are split by the severity level. So you can see it in the VS Code. So this is a good match. You can use it for filtering. This is the workaround window I have talked about. And we can see the description of the vulnerabilities through the quick fix session show description. Okay, I'm pressing it now. Here it is. It works. Well, not very representative. In terms of description, let's have another look. Here you can see the picture. So the developer can see what exactly the vulnerability is about and be scared enough to want to fix it. Okay, what kind of vulnerability is this one? So we see the description, and we'll see the DFD path. It is clickable, and you can click it to see some details. If the vulnerability has an exploit, then we'll see the information in the exploit window. And you can even launch it. We'll have the HTTP file generated, and you have the extension. It will be launched. And now let me share with you the cross-site scripting vulnerability with the PHP. So we can see here so we can use here a variable. If we have decoding, it will be fixed. So now we launch scanning again. It's incremental. It goes faster. And following the scanning process, we can see that the vulnerability is not there. So the developer can check in a live mode whether the vulnerability has been fixed. We can also have some settings for scanning. We can use the JSON schema I've talked about. It is pretty handy. We can add new lines. Here you can see some hints and descriptions. You can also add the ignore files and folders. This is pretty good. And the syntax is just like in git ignore. There are many other functions here, but that's a separate story. This is just an overview. Now let's have a look at the IntelliJ plugin example. The analyzer is already installed, so we are skipping the download and installation stages. We can see the same interface. Well, it's styled to look like the IntelliJ. So you can see the buttons to launch, scanning, the progress window. The vulnerabilities are shown separately, the detected vulnerabilities tab. Here it is. They are split by the severity level. We can filter this. And you can see this marked in the code as problems, like the syntax mistakes. You can also have a look at the description of vulnerabilities. This is the bottom right corner. And here you can see the same windows, the VS Code. You can see the path for the vulnerability exploitation. It's clickable. There are several ways to exploit it, and there are some extra conditions here, or additional conditions. That's another window, and the exploit window is there as well. You can launch it. You can generate the HTTP file this way. It will launch only if we have the ultimate version of IntelliJ. We can confirm vulnerabilities and we can discard them. If you have a lot of vulnerabilities generated and you want to clean the false positives, or you want to set priorities, you can use the tool for this. You can generate the comment through suppress. This is through the quick fix session. This is just like discard, but this way you can share it with the team, saying that this is not to be fixed. You can also have here the settings files and the ignore files, and this is not done through the commands, just like in this code, but rather through the context menu, which is the standard way here. Okay, That's it for the results and the functions, so let's go back to my presentation. Hopefully you have enjoyed my presentation on the work or operation of these plugins. Hopefully you have enjoyed the details as well. Well, we have shared just a small piece of all the functions. And here you can see the link to the GitHub repository for the plugins. They don't have the source code yet, but we are planning to do it. But there you have the README. You can create issues there, and we have the artifacts to download them so that you can click and try it and do some of your own code research for vulnerabilities. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm here to answer your questions. One more thing I didn't mention when I spoke. The best question will be awarded with a small prize. So, following the Q&A session, the speaker will pick someone, the author of the best question, and will give the prize to you. Thank you. Thank you. I believe they should give you a mic. I cannot see anyone. Oh, here it is. Thank you. Hello. Thank you very much for your speech. I really enjoyed it. I have a question. We know that some developers need speed more than fixing vulnerabilities. And as far as I understand, we can disable this using the comments, and then when some other developer or if the OPSEC guy is going to check it, then it will not work. So what to do? To get rid of the warnings or to categorize them somehow? So what are the ways around it? Okay, if in your company security or secure development is so advanced that you have the processes built this proper way, so maybe the enterprise version will be more interesting to you, and there the team development is an option. Well, this is not an advertisement, by the way. Well, I would say trust. Well, I mean that the developers team have the code review process and have the stages, and all the process is built on trust. So if you doubt that real vulnerabilities are suppressed, so maybe there are some issues with the process. Okay, thank you. Thank you. The interface showed the exploit as an option for the developer to test whether it's the real vulnerability. And do you offer any code fixing by clicking the button to fix the vulnerability? No, we don't have this function yet, but we have had some dreams about it. So we have the best place to fix. So that's all we have for now. Andrei, thank you very much. Well, I have issues with trust since I come from OPSEC. Does this plugin have a function to let an authorized guy with credentials in IDE, for instance, to switch this thing off? Well, today this is for local application only, and we don't synchronize the team work using these plugins now. But in the future, with the app inspector, okay, it will be a friend of the inspector. Yes, indeed. Thank you. So we know that the developers' computers are overloaded by Kaspersky and other stuff. So how resource intensive is your plugin? As far as I understand, this is the small version of the stat analyzer. Indeed. We limit the resource consumption. We shouldn't forget about the resources consumption. And in the settings, we have this. Either you use all resources or you spare the resources. How does it impact the quality of analysis? The quality is the same. The speed will be lower, but the output will be the same. Thank you. Hello. A question. Look right, please. I'm here. I have two questions. Have you checked your code with your stat analyzer? I mean the plugin code. Well, this doesn't really make any sense. The stat analyzer is for web, and the plugin is for the desktop. So, what kind of vulnerabilities are you talking about there? Thank you. Then question two: do you have any principles which are kind of different? I mean, in the AWASP top 10. I mean, do you bring your own standards to development? Can your plugin work miracles? Okay, we are talking about the quality of analysis. We have some experts in the field, so they are there to help you. Hello again. Please repeat the question. The question is on AWASP top 10 and its difference. I mean, the difference of your analysis from the sensed analysis. What do you bring to the table? Well, AWASP top 10 is something which shouldn't be mentioned in a decent society when we talk about OPSEC and DevSecOps. Why so? Because it's a kind of charts. So this is the top 10 attacks and vulnerabilities. It's a motley collection. The application inspector works like that. It looks for vulnerabilities and it tries to find the exploit. So then the exploit is verified by Solvery. Then we show it that the detect has happened. We use our own classification, which is well, more based on the Web Application Security Consortium approach. So that's where we started. So we follow this IntelliJ. We have vulnerabilities and we have attacks, and these are different things for us. We deal with them, and we have more of them. And so now, slowly but steadily, we are reclassifying this. So we want our taxonomy to be more clear and transparent for developers, because now the OPSECs understand it, and the developers don't really understand past reversal as difference from random reading of the file, and these are different things with different impact. But this is for the future. We are already dealing with it. Well, to answer your question, this is our own taxonomy. We are not happy with it, but it's better than the standard things available. Thank you for the answer. You're welcome. Thank you. That's really interesting. I have a couple of questions. The first one was, do you check the plugin by your own plugin? And the second was about making it more popular. You said that you want everyone to use the plugin. Okay, how to make it popular? How to raise awareness with the developers? Okay, you develop your own tool. You can control how the information will be communicated, so you can make it clear. Here is the description of the vulnerability. Here is a kind of a picture, some video, and so on. So people will understand the vulnerability and how it works. But if it is a plugin to be added to the IDE, so this means that you limit yourself in terms of sharing the information with the developer. You can only use the windows and other mechanisms which are provided by the IDE. Okay, the developer wants the code to be secure. So they use the plugin and they use the SAST. So they used some kind of shorter version of SAST, but they don't see the whole results. So they will have to go to OPSEC. So those who can explain what the problem is. But this is another thing. If they go to somebody else, how to share the information? Okay, they find the problem, they read the description, it is similarly clear but not completely clear. So they will go to somebody else to provide some more details. So do you have this mechanism to share this from the local machine, somebody else? Okay, this is the third thing, application with the integration with the application inspector and the teamwork. Well, just again, unfortunately, this plugin implementation is for the local operation with the local machine. And to share the vulnerability or to create an issue, well, we don't have tools for that. I agree with you. This is a good comment. The information on the vulnerabilities exploitation and the description of the vulnerability, whether it's really serious. So you need to share this with the team. This is a good and a useful thing. The initial idea was that the developer will be happy to read the description of the vulnerability, to see the red flag, and maybe they will want to fix it. You will see that it can be exploited. Okay, then a follow-up question. When I develop a code, I develop a function, and through a plugin, I see that this function in this implementation is not safe. I believe that these functions will be pretty good. When you think that you need to implement a function, it should take some actions, and if you call the function and you can hear this or see this information, this will be really useful. And this is not post-scan, this is pre-awareness. So you can share the plugins, the information on the function. So please think about it. It's like a feature request. Thank you very much. This is very good. In GitHub issues, we can also send this to us. Okay, I can do it. Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. Andrei, thank you very much. A brief question. If this is developed in a closed loop, is it an issue for the plugin? And what will be the quality if you don't have access, direct access to the internet? The only issue will be to analyze the vulnerable components. We have the dependency checker module. It uses the AWASP open database. If you don't have internet connection for a long time, then after a while you will not have information on the vulnerabilities and dependencies in the project. So say a library in the npm package has this vulnerability and you don't know this, and all the other features should be operational offline. Thank you very much. I have two questions. Well, sometimes vulnerabilities work for, say, one language, and you should describe the version used for the app. So you need to pick it in the plugin settings. We have these functions in Java. You can pick between version 8 and 11 in the scanning sessions, and we don't have anything else apart from it. Why so? Do you have any plans to do this? Well, this is more about the SAST analysis. Okay, thank you. And my second question will be more technical. You say that you control the CPU capacity utilization. So how do you do it? How do you make this comfortable for the user? Do you have an analytical tool to do it? So this is done in absolute numbers. In a spamming mode, we have the cap of 30% for analyzing the code. And depending on the operating system, we have done it differently. For Windows, we do it through the job objects. For Unix, we have this in a more tricky way through some interruptions. And does it use only one core? So how do you control it? This is controlled by the analyzer. I mean, the .NET part of it. And this controls the scanning processes to see how much of the CPU capacity is being used. And do you run this analysis for one core, or do you control every core to maintain this 30% cap? When we start scanning, we know how many cores we have, and the total shouldn't be more than 30%. Do you mean by the total? So the total for all the cores? Well, I believe this is a bug. Thank you for your question. I got you. I see what you are driving at, but I cannot say the same here. Okay. I believe that for every process, we have this cap for every core. So we have 3 cores, and for every core it will be only 10% of the CPU capacity, and then we control it throughout the scanning process. This is not dynamically recalculated. Hello. The alerts are split by severity. Are you going to split them by confidence? I mean, any scanner brings about false positives, so I believe this would be nice. The extension for the categories, I mean, how we assess the severity of the vulnerabilities, this is something already planned. And Vladimir has already answered this question, but this is not for this year. And what about confidence? How confident we are that this is a vulnerability? Okay, whether our plugin, when analyzing the code, understands whether it's false positive or not. The short answer. Now we have only one flag for confidence, so we see whether it is suspected or verified vulnerability. And for the verified vulnerabilities, we see whether we have some other conditions. This is something we have started doing. For every vulnerability, we want to have the CVSS. And this is not one and the same for all the classes. We want it to be calculated for every specific vulnerability in a specific part of the code based on all the criteria of how it was brought to the code. So the CVSS will be calculated with a score from, say, something little to 10. And when we do it, then in the UI, we will have some grouping, slicing, dicing, and filtering based on the CVSS code. And since I have the mic now, 2 more things to mention. Some say that in the plugin we have some small version of state analysis. This is not the fact. We use the same course there we use for enterprise. Technologically speaking, we don't have any short versions or small versions. So if you use AI and if you use plugins, the results are going to be more or less the same. The difference will be in time. Okay, we have another question. I beg your pardon. Does it mean, theoretically, that we can get rid of the inspector? Well, I mean, if we have some trust in the developers, well, we are talking about the security champions here. So we are cool and advanced, and we can get rid of the inspector and have the plugin only. So this is all about money. Yes, now you can do it. You can take the plugin without the enterprise version, you can use it. And you can get all this stuff. So we are doing it on purpose. And we are sharing these plugins for free on purpose. So if you don't need teamwork, go ahead and use it. But if you want to work as part of the team, well, in any way, at the review level, so to have pull requests and so on, then you will not do without the application inspector enterprise. But this is not implemented yet. Okay, thank you. One more comment. Why I was silent when you talked about the short version of the test analyzer. So in the current release of the plugins, we have only 3 modules available. Well, IDE 2 languages, PHP and Java, and the rest is not released yet. I mean the plugins part. That's why I was okay with the limited or shorter version of the analysis. We had some other questions, but we don't have any more time. Thank you very much for your questions. I'd like to pick. Do I need to pick one? This is tough. We had a very good question about loading, I mean the capacity utilization. And we had a lot of questions on the analysis. Well, since I was meant to talk about the plugins, primarily, then the best question comes from this guy who managed to throw me a back.